The two most terrifying things for a beginner guitarist are the ad pop-ups on the Ultimate Guitar site and the anxiety that comes with taking a guitar solo. So today we're going to talk about just some really easy ways you can start looking at guitar solos and how to move them around and play over really any key ever, right? But we're going to start with a super easy key. We're going to start with the key of C, and we're just going to do a very simple progression. I'm going to loop it just so you can kind of hear what it sounds like with chords and a solo, but it's not necessary to have a looper pedal. We're going to start with the C major chord, then A minor. See if you can predict where it's going, F, and then G. And then the solo is going to sound like this. Okay, so it's very simple, but I think the reason that I wanted to showcase this is because it highlights 4 actual different locations on the fretboard, just on the highest 2 strings, okay? So we're starting with the C major chord, and again, that's, super common chord that you're going to see in tons and tons of songs. This happens to be in the key of C, but as we're going to find out by the end of this video, you don't have to be in the key of C to play this, because anytime you see a major chord, we're going to start with this note, right? So a lot of people think of like, oh, the root note of a C major chord is the 3rd fret on the A string, which is a C, right? That is the root note, also the bass note. Now, the distinction I want to make really quickly is that the 1st fret on the B string is also the root note of this chord. Even though it's not the bass note, it's still a C. And everything we're going to start with is going to branch off from extending, starting with a root note and then going forward through the notes in this chord, okay? So if you don't know, a C major chord is a triad that consists of a C, an E, and a G note. And knowing this kind of stuff is actually really important when it comes to soloing, because I think some of the anxiety around soloing is playing a wrong note, right? It's usually not about like having to play faster or, do like crazy fancy stuff or whatever. It's more about hitting the wrong notes. And finding a process of always hitting the right notes is really important. So that's why it's important to know kind of the names of the notes and where to start with. And knowing that, all right, there's a C major chord in this progression. You might not even know that C, A minor, F, G is a 1, 6, 4, 5 in the key of C. If that's behind you, that's fine, because we just really need to start out with that one root note. The 1st fret on the B string is a C. And then the notes that we're going to go with this are this. So 1st fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret on the B string. And you notice that I'm using my pointer finger, ring finger, and then using my ring finger again. The actual form of your hand is also important when you're trying not to get lost and play wrong notes. So getting that 1, 3, 5 like that is going to line my pointer finger up with the 3rd fret of the high E string. All right? Now the notes that I just played are C, D, E, G. And I can go forward and backwards, okay? So it's just those notes. Alright, so I can kind of just mess around and explore that, and it's going to sound good even when the chords are changing, because again, finding the notes in a chord are going to give you the notes in a key, just a more limited view. And as long as it's not some kind of crazy chord progression that is going outside of the key, it's always going to sound good, even over the other chords. Alright? So you could look at this as an arpeggio, which is playing the notes of a chord one note at a time. Now the one thing that it would be different about having a C major chord, and then this, is I'm getting the 3rd fret on the B string to kind of make my way into that E note. C, D, E, G. But again, because that note is in the key, it's totally fine, and I think it kind of adds a little bit of information, adds musical information. We're adding a D note to a C chord, which would be making it like a C add 9. Alright, so all this stuff does kind of come into play, but now I want to go into the next position. So when I start that first part, I'm going to end up on the 5th fret of the B string. And again, this is already a note that we've played, but now I'm playing with my pointer finger. and then I stop right there. The nice thing about this is now it front loads my hand to go into the next position, right? And the notes in this one are going to be really easy. You've probably already played them before, but they're going to look like this. Okay, so we have the 5th fret, the 8th fret, and then the 5th fret and the 8th fret again. Now, you may have seen these as the back end of the minor pentatonic scale, which again is the same difference. This is just more of a musical chord tone way of playing over chords rather than getting into a pentatonic shape. But again, they both work. You can just go straight minor pentatonic. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But this is a different way of thinking about it where you're not stuck in that same position the entire time. This is a great way to maybe slide your way into the position by starting with an arpeggio, and then now we get into that next spot, right? And you know it's going to sound good if you're playing on Elixir strings. This video is brought to you by Elixir strings. I'm rocking the Emerald Virtuo, which is such an awesome guitar, and you can actually put electric or acoustic strings on this. I'm just going through the output there, but I really think it feels and sounds the best with the acoustic strings on here. But Elixir makes acoustic and electric strings are both really good. I prefer the 12s NanoWeb Phosphor Bronze. There is an affiliate link in the description. Please, it really helps me out if you get yourself some Elixir strings through that affiliate link. So get it, because they're really easy on your hands. They feel great. They're kind of perfect for when you're doing slidey stuff like this on the high end, the top strings. So get yourself some Elixir strings. Thank you to them for sponsoring the video. So we're going to think of this as the second position that we're doing today, right? 1, 3, 5, 3. And then we can end on 5, 5, 8, 5, 8. Like that. And then the next thing we can do is we can go into yet another position where now my pointer finger is getting the 8th fret on the B string. And then I personally like playing 8, 10, 8, 12. But if we think of just the chord in here, this note is a G. Okay, the 8th fret on the B string is a G. G, A, B. Right there. And then I can go straight down to get the C, which is the root note that I kind of started on an octave higher. Okay, so this is the next root note on the E string. So G, C, E. C, E, and G make up that chord, right? So there's our arpeggio. And if you'll notice, we kind of had a different root note to get a C, a G, an E, and a G every single time. These would be called inversions in like a chord context. We start with our C, then we go to an E, then we go to a G. And I'm adding an A here just because I think it sounds a little better, and there's a music theory reason for that, having the 6th note in a chord tone every single time. But you can see I'm shifting up through all these positions, and I'm really thinking of an arpeggio just going C, E, G. Just like that, right? You can kind of spell that chord out. The 1st fret, the 5th fret, and then the 8th fret. But I'm doing it in a way all through the neck, okay? So we have 3 different starting points for all this stuff. And then I want to end up on the 13th fret of the B string, which is the same thing as the 8th fret on the high E string, but it's an octave higher on the same string. Now you can play a D major shape to kind of make it sound a little prettier, a little fuller. Right there where it's 12E, 13B, 12G. And usually that's kind of like a nice end. But the last note we're going to do in this position is C, E, G. The 15th fret on the high E string is a G note. C, E, G. Which is the same as C, E, G. So all over the neck. Now we can play that chord progression. see how you kind of like move through there, and it's really not that difficult, and it's all on those highest two strings. Now, I want to talk about the reason that I like adding an A note to a C major arpeggio, right? So instead of just getting a C, E, and a G, C, E, G, we get C, E, G, A. Okay? So if you add an A note to a chord, more specifically, if you add the 6th scale degree, C, D, E, F, G, A, you have an extra note to a major chord giving you a C major 6 chord. The really cool thing about major 6 chords is you can use them in any key where the major chord exists. Now this might be a little more advanced, but I think it's something that, it's worth talking about. In any key, there's 3 major chords. In the key of C, we have a C major, an F major, and a G major. A 1, 4, 5, right? So in any key, a major chord is either going to be the 1st degree of that key, the 4th degree of that key, or the 5th degree of that key. The example that we just used, based all around C, is an example where C is the 1 chord. But let's do something different where C is the 4 chord, okay? So this example would be, actually no, let's do it where C is the 5 chord because that's less used. So let's do it where it's F major, B flat major, and C major, okay? So 1, 4, 5. So now I'm gonna do the same kind of, I'll do a chord progression in the key of F where C exists, but it's not the home parent key, right? So F, C, B flat, F. Now you can hear it doesn't sound bad, but I'm kind of using these C major notes within the context of a key of F thing. So it'll still fit, it'll still be right, there's still really valuable notes to use, especially over that C chord, but you can use the same thing that we've been talking about, but do it in the key of F. So now we just have to find out where this pointer finger that we kind of started out with as a root note is an F. So the easiest spot to do it is the 6th fret on the B string, which is an F. See how it sounds better already? F, C. And it's all really just kind of following the chords. Now, the beautiful note about that 6th note that I talked about in the key of C, right? C, D, E, F, G, A. You can always have a 6th note on a major chord in any key where that major chord exists, okay? That's something that's kind of special about just the way the chords line up. I have a lot more of this stuff on my Patreon if you guys are interested in this, but like the 4 chord in a key is basically the same thing as the major thing with an altered 4th. So, as long as you don't hit the 4th note, then you're fine, which again, the 6th note is in play. The 5 chord in a key, C7 has a flat 7, so that 6th note is still unaltered. So that's why I kind of like just adding that. And it really makes it sound a little bit different than just playing the straight arpeggios. Even having just little slides, stuff like that, right? So think about your root note being on the B string, and maybe start memorizing just the names of where some of these are. It's really not that difficult. Like I said, in the key of F right there, we have an F as our 1 chord, C as our 5 chord, and then we can go to like B flat as the 4 chord, and then just kind of mess around with that. Came from just, knowing the arpeggio starting off of a bass note. So, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to soloing, but this is, I think, a good place to start because usually you want to maybe hit some of the higher strings, and I was trying to do a good job of not playing those strings in the actual chord progression that I was looping. Like if I'm playing the C thing, I'm kind of working on those lowest 4 chords, which is something, you also want to pay attention to, because then it blends better when you hit these and there aren't conflicting frequencies. So again, there's always a lot to talk about when soloing. I'd love to hear your questions and stuff about maybe doing future videos on this. But I think just thinking of a root note and then going through essentially the inversions is a great way to kind of start thinking about it. So if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, or the website. Thank you again to Elixir Strings for sponsoring the video, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.